Yeah, so Lee previously was a developer, full-time developer, is now a technical manager. Is that a fair?
Yeah, technically.
So he's going to chat to us. We're going to do kind of, I can ask Lee questions and make it more interview, but if you guys have got questions, it'll be cooler if you stick your hands up and just ask the things you want to know and let it flow that way. But see how it goes. But I'll kick things off. Kind of, what did you do before? Were you just, was it a developer role that we're all going to be familiar with, or was there some leadership? Or?
Yeah, so when I originally started 14, 15 years ago, entered as a graduate developer into a role, relatively small web development team doing PHP, Zen framework, that sort of stuff at that stage, and then grew in that team and went up as people left or the team changed size, and so went from sort of being junior graduate developer into a developer there, and then sort of slowly inheriting more team lead responsibility as that went on before ultimately switching roles and becoming more of a lead as sort of career progressed, including a change of tech stack.
So does that include your current switch, or are you then?
Yes. So I went at my original job at Grabber, which was a telecoms company. I went from being a web developer there to leading a Salesforce development team, and 2 years ago I made a move to Ecotricity to lead their Salesforce team there, and that was sort of a more deliberate switch of rather than being quite as hands-on, it was more of a, you'll still be a bit hands-on, but you'll be leading people, and in that was a change from managing 3-4 people at the time to now 8 people in a variety of roles, plus a selection of contractors associated with it.
Was it a conscious, I'm going to move decision, or did you just say a new role and that's what came up? Like, how deliberate was it?
Initially, probably when I was going from developer to the initial lead roles, it wasn't conscious. It just sort of happened of, you've sort of been here longest, know what's going on and talking to people that are doing the recruitment, you sort of slowly inherit it. I would say when I made the switch for who I was working for, that was more deliberate, going, okay, I know I want a role which is a mixture of still hands-on, I can't let go of that completely, but will be primarily more, I don't like saying managing people, sort of leading the tech and architecting that, but also supporting the other people in the team doing that.
So there wasn't really, it's more of an organic thing that's happened as you progress. There wasn't I want to move this direction type thing going on. So you didn't have any motivations as such to move, it was just...
No, I didn't open PHPSW one day, have a breakdown and go, I can't do this anymore. What could I possibly do? I'll switch to management instead.
Did you find that when you were still a developer, were you doing leadership type stuff like project management and like directing the technical and like the way the product was going?
Yes, and I would say that partially might be down to the size of company and teams. I think potentially the smaller the company, the more hats you end up wearing. Certainly now in a slightly larger company, I'm doing less of multi-hatted stuff. You know, I've got a full-time PO on the side, so not having to worry about that. Just hired a Scrum Master into the team, so no longer trying to do quite as much Scrum Master stuff as well alongside. But yeah, there was definitely still, whilst doing development, it was, well, you know about this, we'll start pulling you into meetings, and it sort of slowly became more formalised, sort of what was being done, as well as just sort of developing the solution.
So you know full management, you never write any code, do you have or whatever installed on your laptop?
I still have VS Code installed on my laptop, and I still write code and changes occasionally, but what I have learned over the last few years is don't allocate sprint-dependent work to me or something that's going to block a release, because you can guarantee if there is something that I must spend 2 days working on this, I will get pulled into all sorts of meetings or be helping people just not find the time. So where I am doing stuff, it's a lot more around assisting the team, maybe improving some of our tooling where it doesn't matter if it doesn't get done quite as quickly, or sort of maybe adjusting and refactoring some sort of tech debt where, again, it's a nice to have, but not the end of the world. And that is as much as I can squeeze in amongst other things, which somewhat varies.
So do you still do development outside work? Are you drawn to it when you're?
Yeah, so in my spare time, I go up to Edinburgh Fringe Festival and I build theatres and stuff like that. But alongside that, we've got a whole suite of our own web applications that we use for managing companies and press and stuff like that. So a few Symphony sort of applications that we use. So I still do that development myself, which is that's why I still come to PHP Southwest, still in the PHP ecosystem in sort of that regard. So yeah, I do end up writing code in my spare time still.
Do you think you work harder now as a manager or harder as a developer?
Hard is difficult to say. Work differently is what I would say. I would say I have to do a lot more context switching now. I would say hopefully if roles are set up right, and I think if sort of stereotyping, if developers got their own way, sort of stick to the same job, work through and get it done, I'd quite easily be on a 15-minute call discussing one problem with someone in my team, switch context to another one, then switch to a management level discussion. So there's a lot more context switching and having to be aware of a lot more things happening, I would say. I wouldn't necessarily say it's harder work, but it's certainly different.
Do you think you were originally an introverted developer, and what kind of things have you done to actually improve your, if you were, what kind of things have you done to actually improve your interpersonal skills? I
would say I'm still introverted. I am quite happy to speak to people and come in front, but I would not be forthcoming necessarily in conversations to start that off. I would say it very much comes down to practice, which sounds a really easy answer to say, and I think you have to build up and come out of your comfort zone. So I wouldn't necessarily have said that as a developer, day one, I'm going to sit in a room with a CEO and discuss things, but actually other tech managers or even other managers around the business who I might interact with more often, it's a lot easier, and you sort of get used to, you start building up those personal connections and you can start doing that. I would say coming to events like this, doing the networking, pushes you out of sort of an introverted comfort zone somewhat as well, which helps, both from just attending and doing the networking side of things, but also getting to speaking and stuff like that helps get you used to preparing things, thinking things through. So sort of that's how I've broken out of it. I would still say that one area I struggle in and one area I've been given feedback on is communicating upwards, and that's something I haven't got used to. Of actually, if I'm asked for an update and give that sort of stuff out, it's fine, and sort of with my direct manager, speak to him often, so giving those updates. But when it's sort of getting visibility maybe towards director level or getting that information up, that's still something I'm getting used to, learning the best approach of sort of the nag in my head of, do I really want to put that in front? Do they really care? Versus actually doing it so that they know who I am, what I'm up to, and sort of see the good work. Not just me, but the team's doing. I've almost got to do it for the team's sake so that they can see what the team is delivering and what we're getting out there. So that's the other thing I try to keep in mind.
Yeah. So as a fellow introvert that's become a tech lead, one thing that I have found myself, and I'm wondering if you feel the same, is it's really easy to have a nice passive discussion. When you need to have difficult discussions, the introversion kind of gets in the way and you like shy away from a bit. Is there something you feel as well, and something you've got a technique to get around?
It is definitely something I feel. Having to give negative feedback, for lack of better term, is difficult, especially if it's come from elsewhere and having to feed that back. One of the hardest things I would say I have had to deal with is someone getting very close, being put on a sort of performance improvement plan, and dealing with that was challenging because it's not the happy state. It's not sort of improving, developing people and helping them grow why it is, but it's starting from a not as great a position. I haven't come up with a great technique of dealing with it beyond just going, okay, I've got to do this, and if I press dial and speak to it, got to go for it. I would say I still try and prep what I'm doing and prep the person in advance. So if I am going to have that sort of conversation, I'm not going to do the dreaded Teams message of, can we just have a quick chat? Yeah, it might be a bit more of a letting them know that we need to just have more of a conversation about something, giving a bit of context, hoping that they're aware of it. It's a lot more difficult if it's going to be something they're completely unaware of. Had a conversation recently where actually I've received some feedback from someone else in the meeting, and actually my team member had already come to me and gone, I don't think that had gone well. So that was an easier starting point, but yeah, where it's completely out of the blue and having to have that conversation, yeah, more difficult. Definitely don't leave it to the fortnightly or monthly one-to-ones. It's a lot easier to do close to the time where it's relevant still, I would say.
Hi. So my observation is that as software developers, we're very used to ingesting lots of information and reading lots of resources about our craft and what we're trying to do, and then and that's like normal to us. And then when this kind of management position creeps up on us, suddenly we are kind of out of our element. So I was wondering if you'd apply the same approach, and if there are resources out there to help you in that transition to management, i.e., are there books, are there courses, etc.?
That's an interesting question. No, I don't have a stack of like management 101 books or anything like that. That hasn't happened. I would say a lot of what I do has come from experience. I have had good managers, I have had bad managers, I have had managers I've sometimes wondered if they are managing in there. It's been a whole variety of stuff. So I pick up what I like and how that works and what doesn't. And that can pay back with team members, you can work out how they like to be managed as well and stuff like that. I have been lucky to have been put through a couple of courses with previous employers, so sort of management team lead level ones, trying to do the introducing sort of concepts, so basic HR in there as well, pointers on how to do one-to-ones and stuff like that. My current company does some, so I was on a course a couple of months ago about how to give feedback to someone and stuff like that as well. So it's definitely taking advantage of those if they're available, and they're not available everywhere. And I would say even when they are available, sometimes shy away from them, going, it's a soft skills training session, I won't need anything like that, it'll be fine.
Yeah, I think that is definitely the practice to think that it's not just a dedicated skill that you should like to figure out.
Yeah.
Yeah, then you might not say so. Yeah, but that's all.
Yeah, I haven't got a bunch of management things that I would turn to, and I don't know if that's a good thing or bad thing yet. Maybe come back to me in a few years.
I mean, off the back of that, would you think that the way you lead as a project lead is different to different way other people do it, and you actually see other things that you want to pick up from some people?
Yes, I would say I'm constantly learning and evolving. I would say, I don't know, most people probably claim they're doing Agile and Scrum at the moment, and one of the things that you probably do at the end is retrospectives of, what have we done better, what can we evolve, what can we change? And I would say very much like how team approaches in Scrum might change and we might evolve them, my management technique has changed as I've done something, got burned, learned that doesn't work, received feedback, seen someone else do something well or dissimilar and changed through there. And I would say it's also evolved as the teams I've worked with has changed as well. Team members and stuff like that bring different circumstances, different approaches, learning new things. So, for example, I don't know, I've never had to worry about what do I do when someone goes off on maternity leave before. That's something that's come up for me in the last month or so, and now having to go, okay, what do we do? How do I bring someone in temporarily? Do I bring someone in temporarily? How do we handle this? And that's something that I've not had to think about before, and it's having people I can go to and know I can ask questions to, and then going with it from there.
Is there anything that you sort of feel that when you're a developer, you're sort of looking at managers thinking, why are you doing that or whatever? Now you're the lead, you're thinking, oh, actually now I get it. It's,
What did I used to hate my managers to do that I now do all the time? Why are they asking me for updates? Yeah, why don't they just let me get the work done? Why are they changing their mind? I would say, yeah, all of the little niggles I probably do, try and avoid it. Try and avoid pestering people for updates constantly and stuff like that. Probably referring to communicating upwards as well, all the levels of reporting and stuff like that. You know, you can see I'm getting work done. Why are you trying to work out where we're spending time here, or what we're doing here, or how we can optimise this more? It's fine. I'm getting something delivered, and it's the right. Actually, people above me need to know what's going on. Are we getting value for money here? Returns on this? Have we got the right number of people? Do I need to increase the size of the team and stuff like that? That's probably one side of things. Or yeah, why are they encouraging me to go on soft skills training courses? One-to-ones as well, possibly. I always enjoyed one-to-ones to a certain extent. It's good to have that communication, but annual objectives and stuff like that sometimes you feel a bit run-of-the-mill of why are you telling me to try and achieve this over the next 12 months and stuff like that. But actually when you're in a position of going, okay, I ideally need to measure people somehow. We want to give people pay rises and stuff like that, but how do I justify it to get access to that money rather than just going, well, they've done a really great job, isn't it obvious? Having those sort of things in place, and I would say having been through it, also things like that help people develop themselves and get into new roles and work out where they want to go. And I think sometimes you don't necessarily realise you almost need that encouragement and steps to help you progress if you are wanting to progress. So that's probably that side as well.
Have you had a scenario yet where you've had to kind of almost pick a side between your team and then the levels of management above you, and how did you handle that?
Yes. I would say the most common ones that probably come up, probably more familiar, is how far are we going with product development, of where do we cut it short, where is it acceptable to be done, and what's acceptable to drop in and capacities. It's very much a perspective sometimes of, this is a critical issue, or I can just change this requirement and add something in, or yeah, I can try and get this done on time, and it's sometimes going, okay, I can see why the business needs that, I can see the customer pain and why we need to get that in, but at the same time I can see that we've done our planning, I've got my whole team working on things, and if I'm going to switch, it's the context switch, or something needs to stop, or we need to restart a sprint and start all of this again and the impact. And there's very much trying to work out, and probably it's less of taking a side and more of a negotiation in that aspect of, where can we fit this in, what can we adjust, where it doesn't impact one or the other, or where do we reprioritise. That's probably the one that happens pretty commonly, I would say. It's probably not quite taking sides, but yeah, happens quite often that you end up with those negotiations taking place. See if anything else comes to mind, but that was the immediate one.
I don't know if it's been covered already, but sometimes when you're obviously working with a team and you know your team's, you stand behind them and all that, and you have another team obviously criticising another one of your developers because they feel as if they're not quite doing it right in their life. How do you feel when you have to obviously stand up and say, protect those people?
I have had to do that. It's difficult. If you've got a equivalent level person, we're all very opinionated on things, whether it's tabs or spaces or what approach you want to do. So if you take another developer who's opinionated on things, maybe isn't as familiar with the tech stack you're working with, and vice versa, then yeah, it leads to a lot of butt heads over things and arguments. I would say managing it has been sometimes take it away from a call if other people are on there. It's not necessarily, if you are getting to the point of argument or heated discussion or disagreement, it's not laundry you want to air in public necessarily. That doesn't help anyone. I've had it before where, I don't want to say you get an adjudicator involved, but you almost need that, or a middle ground, or almost bringing in a third opinion to break a deadlock or balance it out a bit more to get someone to see a side, particularly maybe if it is someone who's, the middle of the two people disagreeing and stuff like that. It's that horrible thing, I keep feel like I'm saying this, of compromise, negotiating to a middle somewhere. But it is difficult sometimes where you have got two people, similar level, complete disagreements on approaches and stuff like that. And sometimes you've just got to agree to disagree. And sometimes that's fine. And go, okay, you're going to do it your way, you'll do it this way. Maybe we'll come back in 6 months and review if one way's worked and one way hasn't, or something like that. But
Do you come across like other managers, people doing similar roles to you who are from a management background and learning the tech? And thoughts, pros, cons, if you do. If you don't, then I'll have to move on.
I would say not as much at the same level, maybe a little bit more. Maybe a little bit more higher up. Sometimes being away from the tech a bit longer, perhaps. Worked with a tech stack, maybe not the one you're using, so has general concepts and approaches, but maybe not specifics. And really, I don't think it's any different to talking to other stakeholders around the business who won't have a tech background when that happens. So you should still be able to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it, and what the benefit is. And that is just being able to explain things in different ways. And I think that's sometimes why you have some developers who struggle to speak to others, might struggle to get ahead sometimes, and sometimes you need to push yourself to speak to others and do that explanation, because that is what gets you seen, that is what makes you look a bit more balanced, not just that coder who's in the dark basement in the corner who's going to write something and get it done, but I think it also makes you better at what you're building because you have that understanding from other people, that empathy. So you can build a better product. You're not just necessarily going, well, given these 4 precise user stories, I'm not going to pay any attention or consider anything else. If you've got an awareness of what's going on, what other people are up to, you can actually have that critical conversation and go, okay, you said this, but I don't fully believe you're doing that based off of these conversations we had over lunch or something like that. Tell me what exactly you are actually doing, and let's clarify this. Let's go back to the PO a little bit further. And I think that is, speaking to people around the business, not being as familiar with tech or coming from that background, it's probably the same as working with managers at the same level or even managers above. It's just pitching the conversations in different ways and being able to adjust.
Do you find that, as you're comparing yourself to like managers in other parts of the business that may not be technical, do you find that your management style or that the way you do work is significantly different to non-technical managers?
So run the question and by me again.
Do you find the way that you run your like day-to-day, run your teams, do your communication different to how you're seeing other non-technical teams in the company do that kind of thing?
Yes. I think there are similarities, but I think just the nature of people's jobs and what they need to do varies a lot. So I probably work and have contact with a lot of people who do sales, do contact centres, stuff like that. They're not going to be running their teams on the phones constantly quite in the same way as maybe we're running a development team where we'll define the amount of work, precisely what we're doing for the next 2 weeks and do a retrospective at the end because they have no idea really what's going to come up at the end of the phone line. And I would say how people measure what they're measuring varies. I would also say potentially, do I go stereotype here? I don't know. I would say different teams have different career growths and paths as well. And I would say based off of that, management and how those teams are managed different, I would say you probably have developers who are going to either stick in a development team or grow further and maybe want career growth, learn more skills, go architect or something like that quite a bit. I will probably be judged for saying this, but I don't think someone who's going to answer phone in a contact centre generally as much is going to go, well, I'm going to grow in my ability to answer calls. They might see other roles that they want to go into, going into management, getting new approaches in and doing that. But I don't know, I sometimes see a little bit different of what you've got to manage both in terms of workload and how people will progress and the type of progression. Is it a stepping stone role into something completely different, or is it a role which is likely to grow and develop further while still using a lot of skills? And I think that varies a lot over the business and how people have to approach it. And yeah, I think businesses who are made up of different types of teams will have that.
Following on from that one, do you think that management is inevitable for a developer that at some point, if you want to keep progressing, there's a point where you have to go that way? Or...
No asterisk. I think it's very easy to walk into it. I think if you're working for a small company and win that impact, I think it is more likely that you're going to have to do that eventually because there are less heads involved. But I don't think it is something that you have to end up doing. There are lots of people I know and see who are becoming principal developers, maybe have a bit more of a tech focus. You could argue tech lead with no personnel management of architect or something like that. So no, I don't think every developer will walk into a management position. I think they will, most as they grow through, will probably end up in a role which has certainly a good crossover in skill set, especially if you get the architect or principal type approach. You will probably still need to speak to people around the business. They're definitely going to be speaking to team members and putting things out and stuff like that. But yeah, I don't think it's necessarily inevitable that people will end up in a management position or need to if they want to progress and get further.
Yeah, I mean, as a personal perspective, I think people, you go to different companies, some companies expect employees to be leaders in the end, and they will move them on if they don't do that. But some places, obviously, leadership isn't always the way. I mean, people have got knowledge and they're able to teach people and about being leaders.
So I know, for example, there's someone in one of the tech teams alongside me who tried management for a bit. After a few months, decided it wasn't him, still in that team, and they hired a team lead to do a bit more of the management side of things. He's quite happy doing the tech stuff, growing, helping team member skills there and stuff like that, but isn't having to worry about the one-to-ones, the discussions on roadmaps or anything like that, so he's quite happy in that sort of role, so yeah.
What? I'll let him go.
More of an observation is on that point. So I was always slightly naively of the opinion that I don't want to go into management because I don't want to manage people. And then the more senior I got, I realised that there's a huge overlap in terms of those skills anyway. Like if you know the stuff, then at some point you're going to be talking to people and mentoring people and that's integrating stuff. So like I think it'd be bad to be like I was and say and consider these two diametrically opposed things because I don't think they are. That's just my opinion. It's also going to ask a question if I can. So something like one of the points in the Scrum guide, for example, would be that developers manage themselves or they're self-organizing. That's specifically what it says. Is that something you practice or think is a good idea, or do you think things should be dictated from up high? And what is your company actually use?
Does anyone do Scrum as per we've got an idea?
That's kind of what I was implying.
Yeah, ask 20 people if they're doing Agile, everyone will say yes, and there's 20 different forms. I'm going to say I really struggle with this, and this is probably because I still want to be hands-on, and therefore I see a nice ticket and I go, well, this is how I would do it, and this is how long it would take me, and isn't it great, and here's an estimate, and what I've learned over time is if I start suggesting things first, the rest of the team will generally be quiet and just go, well, that's how we're going to do it then. So,
But that's kind of the other side where
yeah,
it's difficult to get developers to be off that mindset where they've got to go, where they've got the goal to say, okay, each person is responsible for organising it. So that's the other way, rather than it being top down, you struggle with it being bottom up as well.
yeah, I struggle. I don't want to put myself in doing the top down. I want to encourage them to do it, and I find if I put myself too much in the top down, it stops it coming bottom up. As if everyone's kept track of which way we're going now, you're doing better than now. So yeah, I find that to try and get people to self-organise a bit more, I need to try and butt out, and I'm not very good at it necessarily. I like to think I'm getting better at it. And I would say as the team has grown and there are more people, it has to happen that way. I can't know the specifics of what 8 people are doing and estimate all of that myself and have all of the ins and outs of the various bits of the code base because I'm not actively doing it, and therefore it is like I've got a general idea around this, but I need your input. You're the ones who've been working on this and are familiar, and I will help guide the conversation. I can put the input in from what I discuss with stakeholders or POs or where I've been in a meeting and bringing them into meetings as well, so they've got that concept, and I will try and give a bit of direction. Or when you tell me it's going to take 2 weeks, I'm going to go, really? It's 2 weeks to change the label there? You'll be taking like 9 days holiday in this time frame or something like that. But yeah, I would say, for me, it's been a bit of growth on my side, and I think it's also where you grow teams and people and encourage their confidence in being able to suggest things and organise and feel like they've got the ability to do that. And some of that probably involves protecting the team from input from above as well, to make sure it doesn't just come all the way down. If the higher level thoughts are just hitting me, you need to propagate some of them through, but where it goes too much further, you always don't need the team knowing that. It's trying to get the right shields in place.
Yeah, that's why I've always thought that management, ultimately you are caught in the middle because you've got downward pressure. I think that's how I kind of grew as a developer when I realised this. It's like somewhere in your chain of hierarchy, there is someone who is stopping the stuff from coming from above, and so you probably shouldn't give them too hard a time about the stuff that you want, because they are caught in the middle, so you've got to try and keep them happy.
Yeah, I spent most of my day today on Teams calls arguing with people over the priority of things, and why putting 7 different tickets into expedite at the same time and having my entire team have to drop what they're currently doing to start fixing those might not be their desired end result, and maybe we could just do 1 or 2 for now and then address it from there.
How do you handle all the meetings that you have?
I've practiced Tetris a lot and if I can perfectly line them up, they all disappear. I wish. With difficulty, I would say it's one of the bits why I don't commit to any work in sprints anymore, going back to that conversation of I just know I will get meetings and drop-ins. From my perspective, if I can have a meeting and avoid maybe a team member having that distraction, yes, I need to be in some, but not all, that helps. I would also say that some of the meetings are me doing my work. If I need to work out what the product needs to do, have an architecture decision, understand what users up against, is it a meeting or is that just my way of doing work now? Is Microsoft Teams my new VS Code? Yeah, I don't know. I make sure I block out time for me. Doesn't stop project managers putting time in. My favourite moment was when a project manager had triple booked me into meetings she had organised. Which of the 3 would you like me to attend? Well, all of them. That's not going to work. But yeah, I do have to do careful time management. I would say getting to know the people who are booking meetings as well helps. So I know if someone books it, there's a reasonable chance it's going to be delayed or something like that if it hasn't been already, so I can leave that one there. And there are some times where you just need to have a conversation and go, yeah, can this just be an email or separate teams conversation. But yeah, I do spend, I would say, the vast majority of my time in meetings now, but that is probably the work I need to do to enable people to get the work done.
We're approaching 9 o'clock, so we've probably got time for one more question if anyone's got one. Or if not, yeah.
Do you think leadership is the right term, or is it more taking responsibility and following up on things?
I think it depends on the type of manager you are. I think it's very easy to sit there and decree on high what will be done, maybe protect the team a little bit, but dictate, and I wouldn't necessarily call that leadership. I would maybe call that management. I would say I am still quite hands-on with my team. I am growing them through roles. One of the things I enjoy and I'm quite pleased of is that I have had people come out of non-tech roles, join tech teams, and have grown them into tech people based on backgrounds. I would say doing that, being a little bit hands-on and growing people and showing how to do things is leadership. So I think the answer to that question is very much what the role does and how you approach it probably dictates what you might label it to be.
Thank you. I think any other questions? He doesn't normally come to the pub, so maybe I shouldn't say that.
I will loiter around for a bit, but I won't be going to the pub.
Sure. So thank you very much, Lee.
No problem.
Thank you very much, Southfield.